This whole wide world is only he and she. Let me say this line again. This whole wide world is only he and she. This is a line from Sri Aurobindo's mantric epic poem, the longest poem in English language, Savitri. This whole wide world is only he and she, the Supreme and his Shakti, the Ishvara and Ishvari, the Purusha, Prakriti, man and woman. And let me share another line from the same poem, Savitri. For this is sure that he and she are one. For this is sure that he and she are one. So the whole creation, the whole manifestation is the divine and the divine's conscious Shakti. The Ishwar and Ishwari, Maheshwar and Maheshwari. And also, this is for sure that he and she are one. There is no difference between Ishwar and Ishwari, between Purusha and Prakriti, between man and woman. These are the spiritual truths that our tradition has spoken of since millennia. Again, so to reiterate what we were discussing in the previous video also, the essential, not only equality, the essential oneness of the two genders, the two man and woman, is emphasized in our tradition. But there is also another important point which we need not miss, that is at the level of absolute truth. When the manifestation begins, when creation begins, when Srishti has to begin, both of these two entities take on different roles so that the work of creation can continue. One is a dynamic poise of that Supreme, and another is a static poise of that Supreme. These two are generally understood as masculine or feminine. The dynamic one is the feminine, the Shakti, the creative force, the executive force. And the static poise is the Purusha, the one that steps back, that looks from behind, the one that in a way decides what is to be done, and then the Shakti, the executive force, the creative force goes and does it. This distinction or this difference is there only at the plane of relative existence. This is where the beginning, we can trace the beginning of how inequality may come through. Where one, essentially they are one, but only for the purpose of creation, they are taken two different roles. But as this truth percolates down from the highest spiritual planes of consciousness to the world of ignorance, which is the plane of what in Vedic terminology is talked about as the aparartha, the plane of falsehood or ignorance, the avidya, where we have these three planes of existence of matter, life and mind. The Annamaya Kosha, the Pranamaya Kosha and the Manomaya Kosha from the Upanishadic terminology. These are the three terms in Upanishads. In these three planes where the spiritual truth has now mixed up with a lot of falsehood, this idea of essential oneness of the Purusha and Prakriti gets distorted and manifests in one becoming more dominant than the other. And Sri Aurobindo and many other rishis before that, many other philosophers before him also have spoken of how in the ancient Vedic tradition, the relation that was there between Purusha and Prakriti or man and woman was pretty much at a level of equality. though that ideal may not have been translated sufficiently or perfectly in practice, but that ideal relation also begins to get distorted or diminished a little bit as time progresses. And for that, one needs to look at the whole spiritual cultural history of the Indian thought to see how that relation between Purusha and Prakriti changed over a period of time. But what is also interesting to note is that in the Indian tradition, in the dharmic tradition, we also had another complementary movement of Tantra, Shakta tradition, where this whatever misbalance was beginning to happen was corrected by emphasizing Shakti more than the supreme, that is the Ishvara aspect. So the Purusha aspect, so the Shakti aspect was emphasized more in those tantric traditions. But that is still at the level of the spiritual thought or spiritual practice. Difference does not mean discrimination. Difference does not mean one is higher or better than the other. It simply means different. So equal and different. This is the way our Indian tradition has spoken of the Purusha and Prakriti, which in our understanding we can also understand as the relation between man and women. So, thank you.